a minute early here, a few minutes early, and there is Ed joining the stream. Hey, buddy, welcome. Glad to have you.
Hey, partner, I gotta lower this box so that shadow is in my face.
Absolutely. I've got to turn my
What's
volume
up?
down a little bit. There we go.
No, I'll shut him when I'm done.
Okay, I didn't know if you.
No, I'm okay. Thank you, Dad.
I'm going to get some hellos out of the way real quick. William Pridemore, glad to have you in here. Of course, Chattanooga Ed in the chat talking to everybody. Griffin Fish Room, Edgar Steckenfinger, Sand Creek Aquatics, hello, and thank you for the $5 super sticker. Let me pull my other chat up so I can actually see what it is because it doesn't show me in the StreamYard chat. With the wow face with the blue baseball cap. Looks kind of like Ed there with the cap turned backwards. Thank you, Nathan, for that. I appreciate it. Good to see you, buddy. Chewy LTD, hello and welcome. Big J's Fish Keeper. The Zen Ginger, hello. Punchy Paints, glad to have you, Pam. Dragon Lair, in case I missed you before. Moonstone, hey, Kim, glad to see you. Danikin Aquatics, Stumpy's Fish Tanks, Fish Whisper. Let me move my chat here. Miles, Big Tank Hank, and Sandy Dowdy, glad to have you all tonight. So I was not really ready to go just yet, but Chris, I appreciate you, buddy, for sending everybody this way. Kind of just took off running from the other room and jumped on the computer real quick. So we're still getting situated, if you will. But I figured that was better than dead air. One of the topics we do have for tonight, we want to talk about some things to take into consideration when setting up a new fish room. As many of you may already know, or probably already know, just looking at the names in the chat and the regulars. Mr. Fish Sir, Brad, glad to have you here as well. I've got 40 some odd tanks in a couple different rooms, and Ed is setting up his fish room. So yep. We've both learned some lessons and thought some things out ahead of time, or come to conclusions after the fact, like, man, I wish I had done that. So we just wanted to bring you all some tips and maybe answer any questions about setting up a fish room.
And you know what, James? I've got something else that I just, whoops. Oh, James, you're calling me on the phone.
I am calling you. Oh, it's where I guess where I set my phone down and you had text me. It's
I got butt dialed by you.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope I just didn't show your phone number on the screen.
It's okay if you did.
We'll edit that out. Jeepers, that really threw me off. Why'd you have to call me? Okay. Before we talk about our main subject, I've got a little project, and I want to bounce it off the people for them to think about while we're doing our stream. Is that cool?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. I'm planning to do like a bowling shirt for us Tennessee guys. And Bob and I have talked about it. And if nobody else wants to buy one of these shirts, Bob and I will get one. But I talked a little bit to you today about it. So you'll probably get one.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know how much it's going to be. I'm going to go to the local store. There's one right down the hill from me, and see how much they'll charge. And maybe we could also ask Kenny's wife if she does bowling shirts.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to try to do it as affordable as possible. But we want to be the Tennessee Fish Mafia.
I like it.
And I've got a cool logo. I don't want to show it off right now to the folks, but you'll just have to take my word for it. It's pretty cool.
It is.
And I don't know if you guys know what what bowling shirts look like, but like kind of like that one there. I want one that goes all the way down. Maybe whoops. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Maybe something like that, or something old school kind of mafia looking. But we're all going to have a name over our pockets. And Bob's already called the first name the Codfather. He just wrote it on there.
I like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. He probably got the winner out of everybody. But I've wrote down about 20 names, and then we'll let you guys come up with any good names also, because I'm going to see if Rack wants one tomorrow. I'm going to talk to Sean tomorrow. Sean, I just lost. Did you guys lose me for a second?
I've still got you.
Okay. Maybe I just lost myself. Talk to Sean Peck tomorrow. He'll probably want one. I got a good one for Tiffany White and see if Ginger, we'll just ask everybody, whoever wants one. If you're out of state, I'll probably have to ask for your money up front. And then I was also thinking if you're out of state, maybe we would be black and orange or something, and then we'll make all the out-of-staters black and red or black and blue, and just for the little bit of coolness to be a little off.
Absolutely.
Like how there's the Mafia in New York and then there's the New Jersey gang. So, but you want some names that I came up with for you?
Sure,
First?
go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now these, and you can also go with the other names too. But Bristlenose, because I know you like them. Gold Nugget, Banjo Shark, just because you look the most like a hillbilly out of all of us with your beard.
You. I appreciate that.
That wasn't a very good compliment. I'm sorry.
I know you're fine. You're fine. No offense.
That was terrible. I'm so sorry.
Don't make me laugh.
I didn't mean to make it sound like that. Okay. Red Belly, Piranha, Moray, or Flounder.
Okay.
And I just picked Flounder because I thought it'd be funny to say.
Absolutely. I will think on that. I like that.
But those are and then I've got another 17, and this one I thought would be awesome for Tiffany. Great White, because her last name's Tiffany White.
Yep.
Or she could be White Shark. You got to use that last name if you got it. Clown, and so like you'd have Clown, but then you could have in little print like Clown Loach, Clown Killy, Clown Fish, whatever type of clown you'd want to be.
Right.
This is one that I like. Omega 1. It's the fish food, but I thought it was funny, and I use Omega 1 fish food. Here's another one that I like. These three are ones that I really like for myself. Orca. I like Orca because it's a killer whale, and it's a mafia thing. And then Feeding Frenzy. I like that one for me. But then there's Killifish, the Loach. I like that one too. Stingray, and then like if you were the Stingray, you could be the Irwin Ender. That could be your theme. Okay. You know how people say Siamese or Japanese fighting fish for beta or betta, whatever. You'd be the Tennessee fighting fish. Something goofy. The Lamprey or Lamprey. I don't know how you pronounce that really. Then there's a bullet fish or a bullet tuna. You'd also be Big Tuna from, The Office. That was always a great name. Hammerhead, and Hammerhead's a really cool mafia name. Filet, the Assassin Snail, and Sushi. So those were a few of my ideas.
I like that.
And what we'll do is, if we don't catch it during the live stream, I'll go back and rewatch it and write down any other ideas. And if you guys have like an idea that you really want for James, or maybe one that you want me to throw at Rack or Sean Peck, I'd be more than happy to direct any ideas to those guys too. And I don't know if those guys are even interested, but I figured I'd offer it.
Or maybe the knife or clown knife.
Ghost knife.
Yeah, ghost knife. I like ghost knife. I might go with something knife themed. That also has kind of a mafia-ish thing going with it.
Oh, there's some great shrimp names too.
There are.
Maybe I could just be Shrimpy.
I like that very much.
Oh man. Okay, I didn't bring a pen in. Okay, well, somebody write Shrimpy down so I can rewrite that so I won't forget it.
Aquamate says, how about Swim Shady? Play off of Eminem there. I like that. No, I think that's a great idea. I'm going to have to put some more thought into that. Come up with a name.
Oh, yeah. Ghost Fever. So, I mean, you guys can think about it now. If you guys like have something pop into your mind, tomorrow while I don't know if anybody's driving to work, but wherever you're going, you just send it to me on is it called not Instagram? Is that what it's called? Facebook or Instagram. I'm on both. You know, or you could put it down in the ideas, the bottom of the stream too, for comments.
Bob Kaler says pistol shrimp. Big J, I like Big J Fish Keeper's idea. Goonch, that's in the catfish. Miss Fever says I should totally be Beischer so no one can ever pronounce it.
Yeah, that way when somebody says, "Oh, that was the biker that did it." Who? Yeah. I thought it was Beischer. No, that was Bashir.
Don Fever. A lot of good names in the chat. I'll have to go back through, like you said, after the fact and rewatch it and look at all the names and write stuff down.
I'm going to guess it's going to be anywhere between $25 and $45.
Not a problem. I like Chewy's idea. Says the colors of the Tennessee Titans would be cool as a bowling shirt. A lot better than the green one I had from the lanes that I bowled at. I definitely like that over the orange. I try and avoid anything orange. I'm not a Tennessee Vols fan, so it kind of burns my flesh a little bit when orange touches me.
I've never actually seen that orange on a bowling shirt. I've been in a lot of bowling leagues over the years, and I should have brought some of my bowling shirts up. I pretty much always go with the traditional black and green or black and red or black and blue.
I do like blue, as you know. Dead Fred 821's Fish Room Fever. I just stopped by to leave a like. Got an interview in the morning, so I got to cut out. Have a good one, everyone. Thank you, Dead Fred. Good luck with the interview in the morning. I hope you have a wonderful night and get you some rest. JH has joined us along with Fish Whisperer Miles, several other people. Priscilla, hello. But yeah, that's a great idea. I think that'll be awesome, especially once we progress past the whole social distancing thing and we can do meetups again and whatnot. Having like the Fish Mafia shirts would be pretty cool.
I think so. I just want to mention one thing while Dead Fred might be here. My gamer name is Undead Ed. So I always think about that when I see Dead Fred.
I'm going to have to add you. I keep forgetting to do that. Of course, I don't know what you play, but we can get into that off stream. But
I don't play much.
I go through stages. I was like, I won't play for a while. Then I'm like, oh, I want to play. Let's see. Recon 338. Hello. Went frog gigging tonight. Awesome.
Wow.
All right. So do you want to jump into the, I guess, the topics of the night in terms of setting up fish rooms?
Yeah.
So what?
I think that the most important thing you need to think about is the cost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's location and things like that, but I would first think any fish room, when you look at the total price when it's all done, they're a lot more expensive than you think. It's not just getting tanks and putting them somewhere. So far I've invested probably at least $2,000 in mine in just supplies, like the wood, lumber, piping or plumbing, wiring,
even screws. If you're building stands, wooden stand screws are not cheap,
Yeah. Well, and I'm using screws to put the wood together. So, but I also have a power. I've got like air gun or air hammer, so I'm kind of lucky there. I've got my brother-in-law has pretty much everything for building, and you see that's another thing is who's going to build it. I've been blessed to have a brother-in-law that can build it for me for free.
Absolutely. And you get into, cost is one of those things that a lot of times we don't take into account when we first start out. And part of that going with cost would be just planning. That's going to help you determine the cost, but that's also going to help you with your layout of the tanks. If you're building a fish room, you've got a little bit more leeway, I guess, in terms of how you can set things up. If you're setting one up in a house or a room that's already built, you need to look at things like your power outlets. Where are your outlets? How many do you have? What breakers do they run to? Houses are wired weird a lot of times. We think of it and we go, okay, this is one section, and you may not realize, well, this room and then two outlets in the kitchen happen to be on the same line because that wiring runs through there, and the electrician decided they were going to hook all that to the same breaker. So those are things to kind of take into consideration. Um, and it's one of those things you can always test your breakers. Go and flip one breaker off and have, just have lamps or whatever plugged in, or we're Aquarius. We've all probably got extra little air pumps or random things that we could plug in for a minute just to see what turns off when you flip a breaker, so you know what you're going to have on that system. Especially, once you get into adding on lighting and air pumps, and depending upon your filtration, there's a lot of stuff that gets plugged in. And the last thing you want to do is get all these tanks set up, plug everything in, flip it on, and then your breaker's flipping every time you turn around.
For sure.
Yeah, and then Chewy LTD says the cost of electricity, excuse me, to run heaters or chillers. Absolutely. Just the simple maintenance of a large amount of tanks is not cheap. It's several $100s a month just for my water and electricity for the fish stuff. That's not including, chemicals and feeding and all the other stuff that goes into it. Just the basic, hey, I need to do water changes and I need to run, electricity to these things is quite a few $100s every month. So just things to take into consideration before you get started. You get all these tanks set up and you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting a $300 a month spike in my electric bill and then another $200 in water every month.
Yeah, and another electric thing that I would suggest is air or an air vent to get the humidity out.
Mm-hmm.
That took me so many hours this weekend. That was the slowest thing that slowed us. The slowest thing that slowed us down. The biggest thing that slowed us down this weekend was just cutting a hole, a 5-inch circle through brick and then the wood foundation part of the house to put that through. That took us forever. We ended up going to Lowe's just to buy a special bit for cutting through brick because we didn't want to shatter the brick by, chiseling it or something. So, but it came out real nice, and so.
It does. And you can also use dehumidifiers. I will say if you're going to use dehumidifiers, almost all of them that I've seen have got where you can run a drain hose to it so that the little bucket doesn't fill up, because that's just one more thing to try and maintain if you're having to empty that bucket daily or twice a day. So I would recommend plumbing that to where it can drain out.
And, that's something we could talk about. Is who recycle? I mean, is there any people that recycle their dehumidifiers?
Yeah,
I have a dehumidifier, and I've thought about recycling it, but I've been afraid to.
I've heard of a couple people reusing the water. I have never done it, but I also need to get mine hooked back up. The kids dropped, I think, a screw down in the fan, so I just unplugged it, and I haven't taken it apart to get the screw back out of it, and I desperately need to. But that is another big thing. It's just the amount of moisture that you're going to have in the air. And that leads into another thing, which would be, tops on your aquariums. Of course, it's recommended anyways just to keep the fish in, if nothing else. But the amount of evaporation that you're going to get is ridiculous. The amount of moisture that you get in the air having lots and lots of tanks, especially in a small area, is really crazy. That you get into mildew problems and things like that, and that's no fun. The best thing while we're talking about tops, and Ed, did you happen to get any of yours cut? I know at one point you were going to be working on those.
It was going to be either today or tomorrow, and we didn't get around to it today, so I'm going to do it tomorrow.
Okay, dope. Would be the polycarbonate. I don't think there's really anything better in terms of do-it-yourself tops. And it's running. I'll let you tell the folks a little bit about the polycarbonate.
Okay. Well, I wish I would have brought some in with me so I could show it to you. But Corey's got has a great video. A lot of people have some good videos, so I don't know if anybody.
Bob Steenpot's got one. I think Jadron Aquatics has one as well.
Oh, he does. Well, so what I do is I measure off of the tank, and of course I cut it to the inside so it fits right down into the lip of the tank. Because you know how your tanks all have like a little lip, so it just fits in perfect. And then for the lid, what I've done is I cut, like, let's say, I was going to take notes during this thing, but It's so hard to pull a piece of paper out in the world. Okay, there we go. So picture this. I've cut this off the sheet because they come in 8-foot sections. I cut this, and this, let's say this is for, it looks like about an 8 by, or a 12 by 16 or 18, I think, whatever a 10-gallon is. What I would do is then I'd cut one across here so it's a separate piece. And so picture these two separate pieces. And I get that clear Gorilla Tape and I put it all the way across. And then I hinge it just on the top with the Gorilla Tape, and it hinges up and down. And it works wonderful. Maybe I should videotape that tomorrow.
You should. And you can also
other
cut
people
it the
made
other
those
way.
videos, but
Because I think you're doing your tanks where you can actually, you have what would typically be the front of the tank is the front of the tank, correct? You're not doing them on end.
My 10 gallons are going to be on in.
Okay.
And my 20s will be long.
Yeah, and that's one of the great things about the polycarbonate is regardless of which way you orient your tanks, you can cut it appropriately. So if they're on end, you can still make a shorter flip open lid like he's talking about. If you've got it faced out appropriately, if you will, with the standard face, you can have the longer flap like you would see on the glass tops. But for those sheets themselves, those are what, a 4x8 sheet?
Actually, no, they're I think they're 2x8.
2x8, okay.
They're real long, thin ones.
Okay. And they run about how much?
They were $23 a sheet.
Okay.
Now,
Gotcha.
some states, and like I think Menards and the Home Depots up north sell the 4-foot paneling also, but down here in the South, they only sell it at, we don't have Menards here.
Right.
And I checked 84 Lumber, they don't sell it, and neither does Lowe's. So the only place you can get it is Home Depot, and they only sell it in 2-foot paneling.
Okay.
So I don't know why, but it just must not be a big thing down in the South. Maybe because it's just so much warmer down here.
But on the 2x8, you can still get what, about 4 or 5 tops for a 2 foot. Yeah, I mean you should be able to get more than that for 10-gallon tanks. You could get, depending upon how you
get
cut
16 almost.
Yeah,
10 gallon.
I mean you could get a lot of tops out of that 20 some odd dollars. So it's definitely one way to help kind of cut costs, and it's also one of the most efficient ways. It's also, because I know people will ask about lighting and things. I can't remember where the study was, but they did use a par meter to check, and it wasn't blocking any more light than your standard acrylic or glass tops would be blocking. So
it's amazing. Yeah, it does a great job. I've heard of people having the algae that grows on the insides. And so some people will take a little bit of the, oh my gosh, I can't think, the clear stuff that you put in your tanks to keep them together. The
silicone?
Put silicone, like you can just rub it down the sides and then it'll block all the holes.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't even do that. I've never had any mold or algae growth in those. I get a little bit of moisture in there, but it's just not enough.
I'm going to run through the chat real quick and get caught up. The Zen Ginger, thank you very much for the $2 super sticker with the red arrow saying she is here. Good to see you. I appreciate the super chat and you hanging out with us tonight. Let's see. And that was before Dead Fred, and I somehow missed it, but I was scrolling back through while you were talking and noticed that. Sorry, Zen, I'm a little behind. Mr. Fish Sir, Brad, says, Fish Room Fever, I put fish in my outside tub this evening. I plan on recording it tomorrow and hopefully posting it. That would be awesome. Be sure to do that if you get the chance. Real quick, I want to address, I tried to finish my video earlier. I did the editing on the parts I already had filmed, had it ready, and I can't manage to build a light for this stupid fish bowl that I like that doesn't look like garbage. So I'm just going to film the video tomorrow without a light on the thing. It's actually getting natural sunlight, and the plants are doing amazing in it. So I'm going to leave it that way. But I really wanted to have a fancy light built for it before I did the video, but that's just not going to happen. So I'll just film it as is tomorrow and put that out. But I wanted to bring that up because I mentioned getting a video out before tonight, and that didn't happen. And that is why I've given up on lighting that stupid thing. Through here, we had some other highlighted things. Chewy LTD says the cost of water, RO, and salt for water changes in salt water also adds up fish room fever. Yeah, absolutely. I'm at the point where I just buy the salt water. I've got enough going on without having to mix water. And if I mix it, I want to pre-mix it and let it sit for a little bit. And it's so much easier for me to just go and buy water at this point. Bob Kaler says, Dan's Fish has a detailed video about the detailed costs of his original fish room. Great stuff. Thank you, Bob, for pointing that out. And get through here. There it is. Chris with Multi-Tank Addiction. Thank you, brother. $5 super chat says, wow, Ed, with that red shirt and that blue hat, you really look like Mario today. All you need are the cover. I agree, Chris. Thank you again for that. I appreciate you very much.
Someday I'll get a big rubber wrench or something.
That'd be great. Let me see here. I don't see anything else highlighted, and I'm back to the bottom of the chat. So if you do have something in particular that you want to bring to our attention, feel free to either highlight Chattanooga Ed or myself by just typing at Fish Room Fever or at Chattanooga Ed.
Chewy did have a question.
Yeah, go right ahead.
I saw it and you were talking, so I didn't read it at the time. Well, I read it in my mind, but now I don't know where it is. But he asked me how my guppies are doing. And the guppies are doing great. Today, one of my steelheads, Nimulus, I'm trying to remember what they're called. Nebulous steel. Mm-hmm. One of the big females died today, probably giving birth. But, that happens. Haven't had any guppy deaths for a while. I've got fry in all the tanks. I've got a bunch of fry in the Lucas Brett's ones that are chewies. And I even have fry in my Jesse's tank. He gave me some Dumbo, Dragon Dumbos, I think. They're just beautiful. So, and I figured out why I couldn't figure out what type of shrimp I had put in Jesse's tank. Because remember how I said last week that I put some shrimp in Jesse's tank?
Yeah.
Well, I spent about an hour searching for the shrimp. And then I was feeding Pam's rice fish, and I saw the shrimp in there. So I somehow ended up putting them in with Pam's rice fish instead of Jesse's guppies. So there you go.
Multi-Tank Addiction says, Fish Room Fever had fun on my Tuesday stream. We should do that again someday soon. Absolutely, Chris. Always fun. We're going to jump back on the topic here in a second because there's so much more we can get into on that. But I do want to remind everyone, / if you did not already know, inform everyone that we will be switching the Nocturnal Feeding Show over to Chattanooga Ed's channel to help with his growth and development. Get him some more subscribers over there. This is show number 18. I think the plan is to do 20 shows here and then transition the show over there permanently. So if somehow you're not already subscribed to Chattanooga Ed right there, go check out his channel and subscribe. That way you're not missing the show every Thursday over on his channel.
Yep. And maybe tomorrow I'll release one. I haven't released anything for a while because I've been trying to save it up so I could just hit you with a lot of stuff. But I think I'm going to probably release one tomorrow.
There you go. Awesome. Look forward to that. Fish Whisperer Miles says, I would put all the strains of guppies in one tank. Yeah, I do have a mutt guppy tank, and then I now have some actual dedicated strains. Thanks to Mike at the Fish Tank Barn. I got some things from him at the Big Fish Deal, and that gave me that final kick in the butt to just take some of my 10 gallons, completely reset them. Kind of like what John had talked about on KG Tropicals earlier. That was kind of a motivator for me. I reset all those tanks, got them set up with the guppies, and it was just kind of invigorating to have the new thing going on, if you will. So I'm enjoying that. I've already got some fry from the guppies that I got from Mike. There's been a lot going on around here. But in terms of fish room setup, there are a lot of things. We talked a little bit about tops, talked about the financial aspect, look at that ahead of time. Just determine, is it going to, you don't want to break the bank trying to set up the fish room, especially if you're not going to be doing it with any type of breeding or profitability coming from it. You don't want to put yourself in debt for something that's just a hobby. And that goes for any hobby. But, when you go to set it up, planning is a huge thing. Are you going to have all your tanks independent? Are you going to try and plumb them all in on the same system? If so, is it just going to be plumbed together for, water changes to where you can just fill it in, it all drains? Are you going to have water actually running into it for an auto top-off system? And each one of these things we could probably talk about for 30 minutes, and there's probably 50 to 100 videos on each one of the topics. So I would encourage, as you're figuring these things out, hit up YouTube and just search for those things and go, okay, well, how do I want to do this? There are some systems that work really great that don't necessarily look the prettiest, but they're simple and they have almost no maintenance to them. One that comes to mind would be Greg Sage. He's got a wonderful setup, but it's not something that's necessarily appealing to the eye with all the additional plumbing that he's got going into it. I love the setup. It wouldn't bother me a bit, but some people would not like the plumbing on it. Things like that to take into consideration, all the way down to substrates. Are you doing like my quarantine racks? Almost all of that's bare bottom. Are you trying to do all display tanks, more of a gallery theme? If so, what are you looking at for your cost on your substrates? If you're getting into, expensive sets, planted tank substrate, really, you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot and get the big bags of pea gravel for $4 or $5 and use that, and it works fine. There's just a lot of things that go into it.
Ace Hardware has play sand for like $2 for a 50-pound bag.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it stinks because I've been saving substrates for a couple of years now, and I have like several 5-gallon buckets of different rocks and stuff. And now I'm like loving sand, and I've never done sand in my life. I just started doing it. But I'm just going to keep using all this goofy rock that I have. And then once I run out, then I'll start going probably to more sands and do it like that.
Chewy LTD says perfect setup would be having a quarantine system in another building and then have a fish room in another building just in case of fish viruses. That's all well and good in theory, and I agree that's kind of the perfect setup. I just don't know that many of us have the means to do that. Even myself, there's never enough space.
Yeah. Even if I hit the lottery, I don't know if I'd have enough, because I'd love to build like a pole barn and make a great big, fish room in that. But still, they have a whole separate building just for quarantine. I don't know.
That'd be nice. That especially if you're doing like breeding or importing or anything like that. I will say that if you're going to have a quarantine rack or a split rack, so like what was all quarantine tanks is now kind of half and half. The top, and for anybody that doesn't know, it's 16 10-gallon tanks. It's 4 rows of 4. The quarantine tanks are all down on the bottom, and like my individual guppy strain tanks are across the upper rows. The reason the quarantine tanks are on the bottom is just so that if you're netting fish or something happens, you don't end up contaminating the tanks below it that are not quarantine tanks. So I'm not worried about if some water comes out of one of my good tanks and hits a quarantine tank. That way, if your quarantine tanks are at the bottom, if you do have a spill or a splash or a net that falls over into the other tank or something like that, it's not going to affect fish that are past quarantine. Chris, have a great night. I appreciate you coming in, and thank you for the super chat, brother.
Brad says that Ed used sand with the gravel cap like LRB did for his son's tank. I saw that, but I saw that video came out and I never got around to seeing it. So I need to watch that and see how it worked.
So I've got, bear with me a second. And this was not necessarily intentionally. I mean, it kind of was. I wanted to do sand. Here, I'll show you what I got going on. I kind of did that already without even thinking about it as being a thing. Camera. So,
Did somebody say something about gold?
it's not going to show up too well, but that's actually sand with gravel on top. And the other part of the tank is just gravel. But this side over here, I did sand in it and then capped it with gravel. And I enjoy it. I mean, it's not giving me any issues. You can see it's got the everything growing in there. All the little wonderful microorganisms and stuff. I'll give y'all a shot of the piranha for a little bit because everybody always likes to see those. There's my light set up and my mess. I have to block that light off, otherwise it glares off of my glasses during the stream. But yeah, so one of the things, and that actually is a good segue point, I guess. One of the things would be lighting in terms of setting up a fish room.
That's a huge thing.
Yeah, and there are so many options. You can go without individual tank lighting. You know, Dean's fish room, he doesn't have the individual tank lighting. He's got the room lighting, and that's it. Or at least the last video I saw of his fish room, that was what he had going. All of my tanks are individually lit. And right now I've got a variety of different things lighting the tanks. A lot of it was kind of where I've just acquired stuff, as most of us do. You know, you buy something off Craigslist and it's like, here's this pile of fish aquarium junk that comes with it. And so you end up with these extra lights and things. But what are you going with for your lighting, Ed?
Well, I bought a lot, like the lighting that Lucas Bretz originally used, the Aqua Neats.
Mm-hmm.
I have about maybe 12 of those, and I really thought I could just keep buying more, but they've stopped kind of bringing them into the country. So that's kind of a bummer. So I'm going to do 2 racks with the Aqua Neats, and then I'm going to go with what Lucas is doing now. Those daisy-chained fluorescent LED lights that you can get on Amazon. You can get 8 of them for like $150 or something. Just daisy chain the whole thing.
That is definitely not bad, and that's actually what I'm using. I just set up 4 more of them. I did a video. Oh goodness, I guess it's been 4 or 5 months ago. I bought a set, and I just bought another set, and I really, really like them, especially with them being daisy chainable. They've had really good growth, and I don't know if anybody noticed it, but the lighting behind me, that was behind me a second ago before I switched camera angles, the angelfish tank, I changed the light over to one of those 4-foot fixtures yesterday or the day before. And I enjoy it. And a lot of people worry about the yellow on those, but I absolutely love them. Miss Fever's African cichlid tank, I've got 2 on there right now. It's a 6-foot tank, so I've kind of got them where the middle is overlapped and then they run to each end. So you've got this section in the center that's double lit, and then the outside edges of the tank just have the single light over them. But I'm able to wire them into the quarantine rack that has 4 more of them, so that they can all go on one timer. So you're not having to plug them into 4 different or 6 different timers for 6 different lights. You've got one plug that's getting plugged in, and the cost on them is really a lot better than trying to go out and buy. I don't want, I love Fluval lights. I have a Fluval light. It's a great light. It does great for the plants, but I wouldn't want to have to buy a Fluval light for every single tank in the house.
Oh yeah, I have 1. That's my first planted tank. I did that, and it worked great for me to learn how to do plants. But I mean, the cost, I just can't afford to spend $200 on each tank.
Yeah, absolutely. It especially when you're doing a lot of tanks.
Yeah, I bought it from Corey though, so that was at least cool. But I've put those lights that you have on your piranhas there on my 200, and I think it works great. I took the two aquanites off, and it's actually those lights are brighter, I think. And so I like how it's brighter because it's such a deep tank. You know, it's a 200-gallon tank, but it's only 4 foot across.
Right.
So 2 foot up or 2 foot back. So it's about 4 foot high. And so all that light has to go down through. So I kind of like the brighter lights.
Sorry, I'm trying to find something here.
Sure.
Bear with me. All right,
I did
ahead.
buy some great little 10-gallon tank lights. And they were about $12 a piece on Amazon. I've been using them, and they work great. They have like they come up off the back of the tank, and they have like the bendable gooseneck to them, and they do great because I wanted something that would give off a blue light, so the blues would really shine on Pam's daisy fish, rice fish.
Yeah,
and so yeah, it's awesome for that. I bought 6 of them. I only needed 1, but I thought, they're so cheap. So I still have 5 more to put on the other side.
here we have it. Sorry, I'm also here in a second. I'm gonna throw the link onto my phone so I can kind of show you all some of the different setups, and we can actually talk about some of the different things while we're discussing plumbing and racks and building things and lights and stuff of that wonderful nature. We've kind of covered lighting, tank placement, which another part of that would just be to kind of take your flooring into account. You know, how much weight you're putting on the floor, what kind of floor is it going onto a concrete floor?
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
You know, how much weight can the floor take if you're on an upstairs or a main level? If you have a basement, you know, it can take as much as you want. But like Daniken, he has lots and lots of weight on his floors. I bet you he has some really good I-beams in his house.
Yeah, and that's definitely.
You know, it'd be interesting to hear what type of lighting Daniken has too, because he has show tanks everywhere. Maybe he has the real nice flugel lights. But and then we were at Sean Peck's, and he has the what are those things called? The real expensive guys. Starts with a K.
Kessel.
Yeah, maybe it's a C. I don't know. But yeah, he has the castle lights, and those things are amazing too. I mean, that looks just like the real thing. So, you know, lights do. You never know. You know, or I guess you have to put that in account. But going back to the house, it is so important to figure out how much weight you can put on your floors. It really is.
So I threw a link in there. I want to show you all the lights I was talking about. Share. And yes, it is an Amazon affiliate link. Let me get that legal disclaimer out of the way there. These are the lights I've been using. You get 4 of the shop lights, $54.99, but like once a month I'll see a $10 off coupon. So $44.99, you get 4 lights. That is about the cheapest lighting that I have found that works well. Let me see. I can't scroll if I'm on the wrong screen. But there's kind of the specs on them, what you're getting. They are daisy chainable, so you can just run them all together and plug them into one outlet. They're really lightweight. They've got plastic versus glass tube, so you don't have to worry about if water splashes on it. It's not going to pop that glass if the light's on, because you know that can happen if the light's on and the glass is hot and cold water hits it. You can pop a tube. You don't have to worry about that. If you're going to be doing a lot of tanks, or even like say if you have one big tank, like on my 220, I'll probably put all 4 of those on that tank because it's deep and it's long. and it would be expensive for me to go in and get a bunch of flugels or 2 or 3 Kessels to go on it. So for 50, $60, I can light a 220-gallon tank pretty efficiently. And these things have done amazing for plants. Give me a second. I'm going to pull this off the screen here once I get my mouse on the right screen. I'm going to send myself a link, and I'll kind of show you all that lighting setup.
I'm going to try to see if I can copy the lights that I've got over. I don't know if this will work or not, guys, because it's such a big link. But that's the Amazon lights that I was grabbing. Oh, it did pop. Awesome. So, I don't know. You can compare the two prices. I didn't even look at that. But, yeah. So, I mean, lights is huge. Filtration. I don't know. Oh, gosh. I'm looking at the Facebook. Or not the Facebook, the YouTube one instead of the screen yards. There we go. James, should we talk about filtration?
You go right ahead.
That's a huge thing.
Absolutely. What's
I'm
your
using
filtration?
Yeah, I'm using sponge filters, and I know a lot of people would use one giant sump for all their tanks, but I'm afraid of my guppies getting mixed, fry getting in the wrong tank and messing up my strands. Like, I don't know if anybody knows who Gary Jones is. He used to do a lot of YouTube stuff. He's the owner of My Aquarium Box, but he had fry from one of his guppy tanks ending up in all of his tanks through his system. And like, I know I talked to Priscilla about this, and she said I could just put like pantyhose or a sponge or something to stop it from going around. But I just prefer to use sponge filters in all my tanks. And then that means I have to have an air supply. So I'm going to go with a Gemco 80, which will do up to 80 tanks worth of air, supposedly. It's going to cost me about $300. I still need to order that. But what do you do for filtration, James? Oh, maybe James isn't there. I know that James uses sump pumps in a lot of his tanks where he has them linked, and then he has his sump underneath, and I guess it's next to his quarantine, and it cycles through and cleans everything. Smaller tanks, you sponge filters. Yep, Danikin, that's what I do. And all my tanks are small tanks. Oh, James is setting up a second camera. That's cool.
Working on it.
I mean, yeah, all my tanks are going to be 20s or 10s that are my main guppy tanks. So that's what I'm using for filtration. And
I'm a huge fan of sponge filters.
Yep.
Now, I'm still on independent air pumps for my sponge filters, but the idea is to get into a Gemco and have everything run off of one air pump.
Now, I did just get this yesterday. It's
Very
the
nice.
big Bluegill.
What can I say?
And
Should have a pair of mine.
I got it for half price, and I just couldn't turn it down. So I'm going to put that on my 200 and just kind of move everything down. I'll take my canister on my 200 and put it on my 75. And then I had a Penguin that I was going to put on there that I won from Sean Peck, and I'm going to put that on a 40 breeder.
Very nice. Yeah, so this one is run off of sponge filters. I've got 2 that are air driven, which you can kind of see in that back corner. And then I've got one, it's actually one of the co-op filters, and I've got Powerhead driven over here. Do this.
Oh, is that filter? or a Z filter?
No, just the co-op coarse sponge filters.
Sponge filters.
So I've got that one hooked into a power head. I've got those two air driven. And then the lighting on this tank is actually just one of those 4-foot, shop lights. And this is about a 75-gallon tank. So that's the amount of light that you're going to get. And about 75 gallons would be, one light would be more than sufficient for the 55-gallon. This particular setup has got the exact same tank underneath it. I haven't added the other light in there yet, but it's got a pump that runs up to the top tank here, and then it overflows back in there down to the bottom. And I do have a pre-filter sponge on that, so that's also additional filtration, if you will, but mostly that's simply to get the water back up to the top tank so it can drain back down to the bottom tank and keep it in one system. I do use
power head on that sponge filter is really cool.
Yeah.
We've also talked about how we use the no clog air filters from Aquarium Co-op in our sponge filters too, to give it a little extra flow. Did you mention that?
I did not. I've only got one that's got the no clog stone in it. The others I've just actually used standard air stones, but I have added air stones to all of those sponge filters, and they do seem to run a bit better. It gets rid of a lot of the issues that people were having with the bubbles coming out of the sponge instead of all of them coming up the tube. If you just add that very short piece of airline tubing and connect an air stone inside of the Co-op sponge filters.
Dragon Lair talks about he likes using the under gravel filters, and I am totally with you. I used to use those all the time in St. Louis, and since I've moved here to Chattanooga, I don't know if the times have just changed and people have stopped using them. And I pulled mine out, and they almost all got busted up in my move. So I don't know if I have two good ones to put together even. They're kind of a fragile plastic, and when they're all dried out and people don't, people pack your stuff for you, they're not very careful with stuff.
Yeah.
When I was moving out of St. Louis, I was in really bad shape because I had just gotten done with my back surgery, so I could barely do anything. So I had to rely on people to do all the work for me, which is always a tough situation. But
I'm
you gotta
trying
go with
to
it.
find some headphones real quick so that I can go jump on this other one and still be able to hear you. Because I know if I don't have headphones, it's just going to echo and cause all that wonderful screechy noise that we all love on the StreamYard cameras.
Danikin said that he uses my big filter on all of his big tanks, so that's good to hear. I know that Dan at Dan's Fish uses that too, the Flugel FX6. And like I said, I got it for half price, so it was like, I don't know. It was listed at, I think it was like $360, so whatever half of that is. So that was a pretty good deal. And honestly, I never wanted to spend that much money on a filter or on a canister filter, but that guy, everybody brags him up so much. I'm gonna do a little review on the filter and then hook it up to my tank, and in a month or so I'll put the second half of the video together and release it. So maybe in about a month or two I'll release a review on that filter. Priscilla says she hates cleaning the FX with passion. Save money.
Right,
Scott says that he just likes to, or he wants to know if he can just throw old cigarette filters in his fish tank to keep it clean.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely would highly.
Oh, and James can't even hear your joke. Nuts. Sorry, Scott.
Hey, can you hear me, Ed?
You kind of sound like an alien.
All right. I don't know. If
Dragon Lair did not like what Alien said.
All right. I'm going to take it that you could not hear me while I was on that other camera. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Let me grab a different
Boy, I lost
headset.
all my signal for a minute there.
All right. Let me grab a different headset to plug into that, and I'll be right back with you.
Okay. And Sharpie, you know, I've been thinking about kind of doing what you do, and I'm going to just start taping me painting my Matchbox cars and some of my models also, and just putting them out on my stream, or not on my stream, but on my channel. And people don't like it, they don't have to watch it. But I figure, you know, it's kind of fun. I'd like to do it live because I used to be in a team of guys, and we'd always put models together and paint them, and we'd just talk like all evening long, like every Thursday night. And I kind of wish I could do that on live stream with other people, because it'd just be fun. Talk fish, talk models, talk games.
Can you hear me now?
Is all over the place. I love that guy.
Ed?
Yeah, now you sound like a captain on a airplane.
All right, good deal. I grabbed one of the gaming headsets, but I guess as long as you can hear me, it's all good.
Okay.
The Bishers are doing well. So this is a 90-gallon and a 100-gallon that are on a 2x4 rack. You have to bear with me. There's not a lot of room in here for good camera angles. But this is kind of, you know, one of the things you can do for space saving. In terms of lighting, this is actually on the bottom tank, just off of a 10-gallon hood. It's one of the old double bulbs with the little push button that you would have, that I just unattached it from the hood and screwed it in there. And it works fine just to give them some basic viewing light. That is, I don't even know what brand of fixture, but it's an LED, and you can kind of see the lights reflecting off the water there in terms of what's on it. It's kind of a mishmash of stuff. And then for filtration, this has got an overflow in the top. And so I just hooked up that big pump there. It's, oh God, I don't even remember. It's over 1,000 gallons an hour. I do have sponge filters also in here, because I love sponge filters. I've got more sponge filters in the bottom. And then it's actually plumbed to where the overflow runs into this little DIY box full of bio balls, and it's got some filter floss up top there, and then drains back down in the tank and repeats. Let's see. We got this system. That's all on the same water system there. So this is actually one of the reptile 40 breeders that they say not to fill with water. And I was like, well, I have it. So I turned it into a sump. So I've got my pump down there. I've got filter floss in the top on there. That's just a little $12 3-drawer plastic cabinet that you can get just about anywhere. The second drawer is full of bio balls, and I've just got holes drilled into the bottoms there. And then the bottom drawer down there is actually full of lava rock. And then I plumbed the bulkhead into the backside of it, which you won't be able to see, I don't think. But so the water actually flows out the back and is then forced around there, past the heaters, and then out into here. And that's just a bunch of loose plants that I've got floating. It pumps back up into here. And I'll show you my makeshift plumbing. So there's the makeshift plumbing on it. Basically, it pumps back up. I got this pinched off because I cut this for a valve, and then the valve wouldn't fit this tubing. So I'm like, well, I just rigged it back together. But that's to reduce the flow so I can get more flow up top. So basically it's pumped up to there. As you can see, these two have drains plumbed into them. This is tempered glass, and at the time I didn't have any other 10 gallons. So what I did was just take that U-shape PVC there, and basically what it does, just in layman's terms, is it keeps the water level equal. So as water gets pumped into here, it's forced through there into this tank, and then actually drains out there, back down into here, and then it all drains back down through here into the bottom. For lighting, that's a generic LED light. Just the standard blue mode, and then the other mode with the reds and greens and whatnot. And then that's just an old, I guess, 20 gallon or whatever, 29 gallon light on top. I can't see the chat, so if somebody does have questions, just let me know. So there's two of those 4-foot lights, which I haven't hung them up or anything yet. They're just kind of sitting there. There's her cichlid tank. Everybody's kind of mad because it's early morning and I came and flipped all the lights on. Filtration on that is that canister filter, and then I've got that hang on back as well. And of course, water changes. Some tubs with baby bristle nose and sponge filters. Don't even have lights on those. Some green water for you. And this is what was the QT tank, or rack rather. And it's just for lighting for those lights. Now, I did, when I first got these, I hadn't decided if I wanted to invest the time to take a piece of metal flashing and add kind of a strip on the back to reflect more light. So I actually just took some aluminum foil on top to help direct the light downward. You don't need to do that, but, you know, it definitely was, I mean, it works. It just depends on how you feel like doing it. Now, all of these are individually run on sponge filters. None of these tanks are connected together. There's all that wonderful guppy grass from Chattanooga Ed. Stuff is everywhere. But then, like down at the bottom, I've got the quarantine. So lots of different ways you could do things. You know, it's really, the way that I generally look at stuff is, what do I need? What do I have available to me, and how can I make it work? So don't be afraid to try new things. You know, a lot of my sponge filters when I first started were DIY sponge filters, and I still use a lot of those. And I've slowly accumulated more and more of the actual brand store-bought sponge filters. But hopefully that gives some ideas. See my mess of stuff. I'm working on getting things kind of situated, if you will. See if I could flip these on. These are all on sponge filters also. At one point I was actually going to plumb them all together, which is why there's this gap in between, because I was going to have bulkheads coming out, have everything drained straight down the center into a sump system underneath. But at the time, I decided this was going to be quarantine tanks, and I didn't want them all plumbed together. But for lighting, I mean, that's just an old 4-foot light with one of the bigger fluorescent bulbs in it. And it actually grows plants, I think, better than just about any other light I've got. That's a generic LED. And then I've just got another generic LED on the bottom. But I mean, they all grow plants really, really well. I've not found any of them that don't. So there's just some different ideas. Again, the racking system. And this is one thing I haven't seen a whole lot of people do. is actually doing the dado cuts so that you can have the 2x4 inside of the frame. And part of the reason I did that is this is actually the hallway, so I wanted it to be as close to the wall as possible. And doing the cuts like that allowed me to kind of thin the frame out a little bit more. But I'm going to jump back over to my seat and my main camera, and I'll be right back with you. Oop. Looks like I lost Ed.
I see you, buddy. I didn't realize I had lost you till just a moment ago.
It's all right. I lost my internet about maybe 4 or 5 minutes ago.
Oh, sorry.
Ever since the quarantine, my internet, my DSL's been going off and on, and been a lot weaker than it normally is.
All right, let me get back through the chat.
But I like those racks a lot. They look great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and it's different styles. Just depending. Even this one here. Trying to show you all of my mess here. It's 240 breeders, and then a tote I used for a DIY sump underneath. I mean, it's like I said, one of those things. My goal is to try and show people that there's more than one way to do it. You don't have to go buy a $300 sump. If you can, great, but don't feel like, oh, well, I can't really do this because I can't afford to buy what's on the market, so to speak. Don't be afraid to think outside the box, build your own things, come up with your own ideas.
I have thought about sumps probably for the last 20 years, and I've just been, I guess, chicken. I've just not done it yet. I'm still a sump virgin.
Well, I will just say the most important thing, the most important thing being make sure it holds water and doesn't leak. Okay, after that should be an obvious, but the second most important thing is when you're building the sump, keep in mind how much water volume it's going to have to catch if that pump goes out.
Mm-hmm.
So like even on where I have that 90 gallon and that 100 gallon on the same rack, I will always have a couple inches of space on the bottom tank that's not filled. That way, if that pump goes off and that 90 gallon drains, the bottom 100 gallon doesn't overflow. It simply gets topped off. The pump comes back on. It pushes the water back to the top, and you have no puddles in the floor.
Well, maybe once all the crisis is over and everything, you can come over and show me how to do one, and we'll do one.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to.
I know Bob and I were looking at one. I was for myself, not for him, but I was looking at one that was oh, I love that fish. It just came up to your camera. Check him out. What is that, James?
Oh, there he is. That is the oh my God, I can't think of what it's called. The Green Terror. That's the Green Terror. That is Thor. His name is Thor.
Oh, now you can tell that he's a cichlid, but at first, man, he looked like, I don't know, he almost looked like a saltwater.
Yeah, I wasn't sure which one it was at first when I moved the chat off the camera. And I kind of like this better with you down there because I can see you. Normally, you're halfway covered up on my chat box, but
no, that's cool.
That'll work right there.
I forgot what I was going to say.
There were some questions, and I'm sorry I couldn't see the chat when I was doing that. Let's see, Jace Crazy Obsessions says the water bridge is wicked clever. Yeah, I love the water bridge, which is just that U-shaped upside down PVC. When you do that, you do need to prime it the first time. So I shove a piece of tubing up in there and get suction going, and then just once the water starts draining out of the tubing, you just pull it out and it's primed and good to go. If you're talking about that same system, Jay, that's a 40 breeder with 3 tins on top, and then the sump section holds about 20 gallons, which I do also use that for plants and Like I've got some Cory cats down there. I'll put things down there that maybe I need to keep away from other things to keep them safe. Almost kind of like a quarantine tank, but not in terms of disease or anything like that.
Dragon Lair wants me to goose you, but it's not going to happen.
All right. I am looking. I'm back in the chat. I'm at the bottom. Anybody that had any questions about that stuff that I missed, feel free to throw it in there, and I'll be happy to answer them. But I just wanted to give you all some ideas of different ways you could do things, and there are 100 different other ways that you could do things. But a lot of that, like I said, is what do I have on hand? What do I need to build? How can I do it? Versus, oh, well, let's just go out and spend $300 on this part or this pump or this light. Especially now, you know, people not being able to work and money being even more of a factor than it typically would be. Kind of thinking outside the box.
Yeah, well, for my shelving, for my main racks, I'm using Husky racks, which come with 4 like shelves. And I was originally going to go 4 high, but I'm a big guy, and when I'm sticking my arm in there, I wanted to have extra room. So I ended up just going 3, but because I did 3 racks, I mean, I got 1 spare shelf for each one. And I bought 3 units, ended up with 4 shelving because I took one shelf out of each box and made a whole nother shelf out of it. Like,
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm actually getting, you know, a whole extra $300, or not $200 shelving unit.
Oh, you gotta love that. And that's, mine aren't the brand, but they're the same design with that interlocking metal ring for the 16 10 gallons that I have. It's a metal shelving, just like what you've got. I absolutely love that stuff. If I were to start over and be, like, say, setting up kind of like you mentioned in a pole barn, you know, something like that, or a fish building, that would be the way that I would want to go with it. I think, unless I needed like something super customized, then that's the best way if you're just going to have all of the same tank on top of each other. Jay's Crazy Obsession says, I want to build something similar for my Ancistrus, but with a zoomed lowboy and a 75 and 2 20s. So 20s on top, zoomed, and 75, 6 inches off of the floor. Thoughts? I don't know what the dimensions are on the zoomed lowboy. I mean, you can definitely do it. Basically, when I go to build something like that, I sit down with the dimensions of each type of tank that I'm going to be using. And then I look at what's the minimum that I need underneath those for support in terms of a frame. And then I sit there and I play with it. And I go, well, if I turn these 2 this way, or if I put these on top here, oh, well, there I've got 4 extra inches of space. Let me see if I can bring this down. Oh, and I try and minimize as much as possible on the math part of it, and just look at how I can place the tanks. How much room do I need in between, like Ed was talking about? You know, some of the tanks I don't mind not having room. You may have noticed on the 10 gallons that are above the 40, I've only got a couple inches of room there. That's fine. It doesn't bother me. I can still get in there. I can still catch fish out. It's not easy, but then again, those tanks are all the way up at the ceiling, so it's not easy to get into them in general. I wouldn't put something that I'm going to have to be in there messing with every other day.
And this isn't very good. This is looking through the doorway that I've built to my fish room, but you can kind of see how I've got in the 3 racks. And I could have gone 4 easy and filled it in, but kind of like what Dragon Lair said, I didn't want to sit on the floor, so my bottom one's a foot off the floor, maybe a foot and a half, and then I've got a foot in between each tank, so I have plenty of space for that. But now, Jay was talking about the low boy. One of my favorite things about a low boy is looking through the top. know, versus the side. And if you've got a shelf over it, you may not be able to actually get the potential of looking down on the fish. Just throwing that out.
In
If I
that
had a low boy, I'd
instance,
have it on its table.
yeah. Well, and if you are going to rack it, what I would probably do is kind of, I'm going off of the same three-tiered premise as the rack that you were looking at.
Mine or
For
his?
Jay's, when he was asking about trying to do a couple of 20s, I'd do your 20s on top, and then I would do your low boy for the middle tank, and then leave space. So like Ed's talking about, you can still see down into the top of it. I would almost, I noticed he said it's the same footprint as the 75, just shorter. I would make it tall enough that your 75 could go in there and still have room, and then put the low boy in there. That way you've got plenty of top-down viewing. And then if you decide you don't like it, you could always move the 75 up from the bottom to the center and put your low boy on the bottom if you wanted to. And you wouldn't have to rebuild anything if you built it with the ability to have enough space to put the 75 in that center section.
Hey, is Bob still here? Maybe I'll have to text Bob tomorrow. I just wanted to know how close we are to tubbing season. Because I think Brad said he already set his up. He's a few hours south of me. I just don't want to set mine up too early.
Fishy Fun 57 says, Fisherman Fever, we need a series about fish keeping on a budget, along with where to place large tanks in a mobile home with 2x6 construction. So I'm in a single wide mobile home, which I've mentioned before. I've not had any issues. Legal disclaimer, do your own calculations, talk to whatever people you need to talk to, get whatever consultation you need to. What works for me may not work for you. That being said, all of the tanks you see are in a single wide mobile home. I do, but I'm also one of those people that's like weird about things. Like I'll be walking through and like feeling the floor just to make sure that I'm not starting to feel a sag or anything like that. You can go on Amazon and get floor beam supports fairly cheap. I think the last time I looked, it was like $25 a piece, maybe, for the metal screw out supports. You can go underneath there with a big piece of timber and add additional support under your floor for a mobile home. That is my plan, is to do that just to be safe. And of course, there's so much that factors in the age of the mobile home. Some people would argue the older the better because they used heavier lumber back then, but it's the condition of it's going to play a factor. How good is that wood that's underneath? Brand new ones, they're going to have cheaper lumber that was used, but it is going to be newer and better condition, typically speaking. So there are a lot of factors that play in, and I know we all hate that answer of I don't know. It depends on what you got. But just something to keep in mind.
Brad asked if I found the pump that I was looking for, and he is just setting his up to start cycling. So I was kind of afraid to start cycling it too early because I just didn't want to cycle mosquitoes also.
Right.
But I did get the pump. He said go to Lowe's. My local Lowe's is too small, but I went to the big one in Athens. That's like a town kind of south and east of Bob, I guess. Yeah, east of Bob. And they have a great big one, and they had everything. So I got a great pump. So thank you. I appreciate that.
So Fishy Fun 57 says, I'm only 4'9", and tall tanks are so hard to work on. I'm unstable on stool, so that's not an option. One thing that I would recommend then, if you were going to be building rack systems and stuff like that, you could always build the space above it for storage so that you're not actually having to get up and maintain a tank that's up high. But let's be honest, how many of us can say that we have plenty of storage for all of our fish stuff? As soon as the deeper you get into it, the more stuff you accumulate. You've got extra pumps and lights and hoods and, filter stuff. And it's just an unending, supply of fish stuff. So you could always take where, like, maybe I would have a third row of tanks up top where you're not wanting to maintain up high because, it's difficult or you're unstable on a stool. and just kind of have storage up there where you could put things that you wouldn't necessarily need to get on a stool to get them down, but they would be out of the way and you can still utilize that space, especially given where you mentioned in a mobile home, space being limited. Yeah, I don't know, you may have a massive double wide. I'm in a single wide. Speaking of me being the most hillbilly of all of us, as Ed mentioned earlier, in my single wide trailer with my beard and no teeth, I reckon. Space being a limited thing, you could use that area above that for storage. That would be my first thought.
Bob, I was going to set up my tank or my outdoor tubs when you set up yours. And going back to Fishy Fun, she's so little bitty, you just need one shelf and then set up 2x4s on the floor and just do 2 layers. Don't go 3 high.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. She could, instead of doing the third one high, just use that for storage. I mean, basically, she's probably looking at, if I had to guess, like 83 or 84 inch ceilings in a mobile home, which is not that high. Even at 4'9", it's still not that high. So if you've got your shelf, your storage shelf is at 6 foot, that's definitely within arm's reach to where you're not having to get up on anything, but you can still utilize that airspace above, because space is definitely a factor, which is why when I was in the other room trying to get shots, it's like, I can't really get a full-on tank shot from here because there's 5 other fish tanks blocking it.
Yeah. One of my goals that I've made for James was he's talked about how he plans on eventually moving his trailer somewhere to where he has some land. And I would love it if he would get just a pole barn and a flat concrete floor and then do his fish out in that. And then it won't damage his trailer. Because I had a buddy and he had some rough floors in his trailer because of the abuse. So,
yeah, well, and that's one of the things is before any of these tanks came in, before I got back into the hobby, I actually went through and redid the floors, not the subfloor, but I took all the carpet up and laid down flooring in all of the rooms. And in the process of doing that, inspected all the subfloors and everything was good to go. So I know I had a good starting point beforehand. But I still kind of just keep things in mind. When you walk, you can feel if a floor is off or if it's got waves in it or if a board starts to get worn. And that's one of the good things is with this tongue and groove wood flooring is generally it will start to go bad before the subfloor will. And so I'll be able to feel it. But the plan is not to have them set up like this for 20 years, hopefully. She was asking about going over the I-beams. And definitely I see you mentioned keeping them along the walls is always a very good idea. When I moved the 220 gallon in, nobody panic. Yes, I'm putting a 220 gallon in. Keep in mind, you just saw 190 stacked on top of a 90 stacked on top of a 100 on a 4 foot space. When I move it in, it's definitely going against the wall. If you're on a second floor or you're not on concrete flooring, I definitely recommend looking at how your beams go and setting your tank up if you can to where it's covering the most beams. So if you've got, 4 beams in your floor, set your tank up going this way versus going this way where it might be sitting on, 2 of them. And it's distributing that weight.
Yep. Well, and James has done a wonderful job because I honestly, I looked at his floors when I was there. I paid attention too. So, but that's just because of my friend back in St. Louis that had the uneven floors. And James has so much weight on his floors. It's amazing.
I do. I also had several thousand. Well, I had a couple thousand gallons of tanks on a second floor at one point. Just because the way that house was built, it was built on a hill. So the main living floor that you walked into was actually the second floor. And this was the last time I was in the hobby, a lot of big tanks. I had multiple 175s. I had the 125s. I had a couple of the 120 4x2 boxy ones. I had the 220. bunch of 55s. They were all on the second floor. Again, legal disclaimer: do your research before you put tanks up like that. But generally, it can be done. Generally speaking, do the math. And that's one thing is I'm a math nut anyway, so I'll pull the calculations out and I'll go, okay, this 2x4 can take X amount of weight, and I've got this much that's being distributed across this many beams and all that fun stuff. So.
Oh, well, okay, Bob. I'm going to set my tanks up tomorrow so they can start collecting water. Bob said that he's got his ready. Somebody said something about me doing white clouds so I could have them year round, and I can't find it now. But I am going to do white clouds, but that's another year down the road. I plan on doing a greenhouse outside and keeping white clouds and rice fish year round in the greenhouse. So I don't know who said that, but and then Fishy Fun, she said that I was the third person to guess that she's a female. And honestly, I didn't guess. I just remember from one of the streams a long time ago, you said you were a girl, and I just remembered. So I'm not really a detective. I just have a memory.
Fishy Fun 57 says, I have bare floors. Fisherman Fever, are you in a park? My neighbor has a 220 with a 90-gallon sump. It's up for 3 years. His is a 1973 in reference to the trailer with 2x3s. I'm waiting for his floor to go. Yeah, that's one thing I will be doing, specifically under that 220. It's going in the living room. Don't tell Miss Fever. It's going in the living room, which doesn't have, well, it has the eel tank in it now. I managed to sneak a saltwater tank in there because the tanks are expanding through the house that direction. But it's going on a wall, and I will definitely get the supports underneath it. And that's kind of been, aside from the whole social distancing lockdown thing, one of the things that slowed me down is I want to get the floor supported before I get it moved in because that tank is in storage. But I want to get the 220 up so that I can move the piranha to the 220 and get that eel at least into this 125 for now until I can get another big tank set up. But yeah, I'll definitely be doing some support work under there. But if you look at the difference of a 6 foot, 220 gallon tank, and then a double stacked, a 90 and a 100 gallon, which is also got, so we'll just call it 200 gallons of water with the little sump system and all that. On a 4 foot area, the way that weight is being dispersed, it's actually going to be better on the beams with the 6 foot tank. I will also take and build, which I don't have one in here to show you, but if I've got something that's got a lot of weight, instead of just having 4 legs or 6 legs coming down to the floor, I will actually build that stand where those legs are coming down to a beam all the way around. That way that weight is being distributed a little bit better across that beam onto the floor versus just through 4 legs. So that's another trick you can use. You can also take and add an additional piece of really thick plywood to help with weight distribution, especially if you're worried about individual spots on the floor not being able to withstand that weight. You're an inspiration. How many tanks do you have set up? Thank you, Fishy Fun 57. I have 40, should be like right at 45 because I've set a couple of nano tanks up and I was at 41 or 42. Somewhere between 40 and 50. In terms of gallons, I saw you ask earlier. I would have to add it all up, but it's between 1 and 2,000. It's over 1,000, but it's less than 2,000. I know that much off the top of my head.
Dragon Lair says, be careful, Ed. Greenhouses get really hot in the summer down south. And I think that's why I can't get that plastic at most of the hardware stores, because people just don't do that many greenhouses. I was actually thinking that I would do like removable walls. So it would be a greenhouse in the winter months and like a gazebo with a glass roof during the summer months. That was kind of my idea. So that way all the mosquitoes could get in there and do their trick too. But I appreciate that, Dragon Lair.
Absolutely. And Dragon Lair also says I may have to move to the doghouse. That's what this end of the house is. All these fish tanks. This is my doghouse. Fishy Fun 57 did ask if I was in a park. Yeah, I am in a mobile home community / trailer park. I own the mobile home, but I rent the land below it. I'm looking for property, like Ed mentioned, and then once I can get some property, that's when the fish room fever will really take over. Chewy LTD, always with the wonderful insights, thoughts, and questions, says, "What do you think of the idea of raising and slowly lowering temperatures to aquariums to represent seasons of nature, since lighting has been developed that way?" I think it's a neat thought. I don't see anything wrong with it, if you will. And I've kind of been doing that somewhat at home. And what I mean by that is a lot during the daytime, we're killing the HVAC. We're turning off the central heat and air. And then opening, like I'll open a window and set up a fan in it to where it's blowing the air through the house and have the doors open. So it's just creating airflow through the house. Also to help combat the moisture and just kind of air the house out from being stuffy and all that wonderful stuff. So of course you're getting temperature fluctuations in the tanks doing that. That's one of the things I thought about when I did it, was I want to make sure that the tanks are staying within certain parameters. And I've not noticed any problems whatsoever with doing that. The fish are used to having temperature swings in the wild. We kind of get them used to being at a set temperature for the most part, most of the time. I don't necessarily. Okay, I know of a couple ways that you could emulate that without like changing the whole house temperature, but I don't know that it would be something that would be worth the effort to do, like putting your heater on a timer to only heat during certain parts of the day to sync up with your light cycle. You could do something like that and then have it where the heater's off at night and temperature drops down. The heater kicks on in the morning as your light starts at sunrise mode. And you could even have a second heater that kicked on, when it got into the midday mode, and then kick one heater off as it's going into the sunset mode, and then kick the second heater off as it hits the nighttime mode again. You could do something like that to help emulate the temperature matching the light modes on the light. But I don't think that it's worth the effort to do that, at least from my perspective.
Hey, can I grab one quick?
Absolutely.
Mark Van Winsco. Have we ever seen him?
Once or twice, but hello and welcome.
Yeah, I totally apologize. I don't know. Your name seems new to me. Maybe it's an old name and I forgot you. I'm so sorry. But it says, Ed, check out Vietnamese white clouds if you're looking for something a little different. So I'm doing that right now. And these things look, got to make sure I say the right thing. Awesome. Look at that.
Oh, wow.
That is super
nice.
Cool. Well, I took a photo of that comment, and I will definitely check that out.
Well, Ed, if you'll do me a favor, because you're better at staying on top of things than I am, when you go to ordering those, let me know, because I'd like to get some. Those look really, really cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Well, you see, I'd like to do them in a greenhouse outdoors year round, so hopefully they would just kind of breed themselves. I think that'd be fun. And I guess there's enough white clouds. Maybe I'd do a couple different types of white clouds. I really think white clouds are cool fish. Just don't get enough credit.
Fishy Fun 57 says, I wonder if James has any room for furniture. I mean, furniture just stands for fish tanks that hasn't been utilized yet.
I think he has a couch.
Yeah.
Is that what all the Legos were on?
Yeah. No, we did have two recliners, and then we just swapped over to a couch. I think we're going to go back to two recliners. I mean, you're just basic furniture. In my office, I have my desk, but it also has, my multiple monitor units and mic and all that hooked up onto the shelving, and 3 aquariums on the desk. So I generally find a way to put fish tanks just about everywhere. Even my safe has tanks on top of it. So.
And his safe is huge and heavy.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I apologize for not knowing you. I'm going to sub to you when this is over, and I will make sure that I read the next time you make a comment if you get to keep hanging out with us during the time. And
thank you for the
Yeah.
tip on those Vietnamese white clouds. Those things look awesome. I don't think I've seen them before.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely gonna be on my list of fish to get. If I just see them or can order them before, I'll just keep them in my fish room. Hopefully they can handle 75-degree temperature, because that's what I'm gonna be keeping my fish room at. That was something else we didn't talk about, was heating the fish room. I plan on using one heating system to heat the whole room instead of several heaters. You know, for one, you don't lose a tank because you have a faulty heater. You save a ton of electricity because each one of those little heaters use a lot of electricity. Um, I don't know. It just makes it easier. I just to keep it one. And if it breaks, it's a lot easier to find out that it broke right away too.
I'm just a temperature wizard, and I just wave my hand, and it magically.
His house, I've said it before, his house is amazing. How it's always a wonderful temperature. But
Now,
I think my room will always be. It won't probably ever get cooler than 68 because it's in the basement without any windows, and it's pretty much all underground. So
I do have a lot of heaters, but they aren't on a lot of the time. They're almost in there more fail safes in case it were to get super cold, like especially during the winter time. You know, if we have a power, well, wouldn't help during a power outage, except on this one that I've got the backups on, which is another thing we could talk about. But most people aren't going to get into backup power supplies on their aquariums. But this system houses a lot of plecos that would be extremely missed and expensive to replace. So I've actually got it set up on a backup power supply so that even if the power goes off, the heater can still run on that along with an air pump. But I've got heaters in most of them, but they're turned down so low that they're not running very often. It's almost like a just in case, maybe the air gets turned on or the heat gets turned off by mistake type of thing, depending upon the season. Or something happens, and for whatever reason, the temp gets way, way off in the house. But even though I have heaters, they're not on most of the time. I mean, this is at 78.3 right now. And as Ed knows, it's fairly warm in this end of the house the way I do it. I did want to get to real quick Jay's Crazy Obsessions. I saw something about a trickle filter, but I didn't actually catch it. If you wanted to throw it back in the chat, I'd be happy to answer that question. Let me burn through some of these real quick.
hey, I just want to say hi to Melvin while he's in the
Hey, Melvin,
house.
glad to see you, Storm Riders. Fishy Fun 57. I do not have the advantage of the water being included in my lot rent. I pay simply for the grass that my house sits upon. So my water bill is not cheap, and I don't like them.
Bob says Rachel has Vietnamese white clouds. So we'll see if she has them for sale or if I'm going to have to ask her personally. Hey, Rachel, remember me? I'm that nice guy.
Chewy says, I think it would reduce overbreeding behaviors in some species where there is real aggressive breeding species, a fish from fever that may only breed once in a lifetime in nature. I mean, yeah, I honestly don't know. I'm sure you've done a lot more studying on that than I have, Chewy. If there were some actual purpose behind it, like what you just pointed out, I could definitely see doing it. But just for the fish I keep for guppies and tetras and the piranha and whatnot, I don't really see a reason to sync heaters up to my light cycle. The only reason I would possibly do that in my particular cases would be if I can't get these piranha to breed after trying all of my other tricks that I have, possibly doing that. Let's see. Dragonlair says the kids sit on the floor, James. Yes. No, they have their own chairs. They've got chairs. And no, they do sit on the floor a lot because half the time they're just coloring anyways.
I used to sit on the floor all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of being a kid. Fishy Fun 57 says, LOL, James, I'm getting rid of furniture for more tanks. Absolutely. The best thing is when you can have furniture that you can put tanks on top of. Like the desk. I've got all the drawers and space and storage and all my wonderful YouTubey stuff plus tanks on it. So you can't go wrong there.
Hey, Hoods 21 Fish Tanks is in the house.
Hey, glad to have you. I appreciate you showing up. Some more tanks. And there is Melvin. I'm working on getting caught back up. Jay's Crazy Obsession says, Fisherman Fever, just wondering why not in your system pump all the water up and let it flow down with the help of gravity. So that's basically what it's doing. The only reason that I teed off, where I did on that one particular system that you're referencing was because I didn't have the tanks up top initially, and I wanted the additional flow in there. So now that I've changed it around and I don't want I do want the extra flow, but I've added a power head in place. So, but yeah, that's the best way to do it, and that's generally the way I design everything is top-down trickle. So like the tank system here, everything gets pumped up. You're going to see all my mess and stuff, but that's okay. Everything gets pumped up to the top there, and then you can kind of see the bulkhead in the back corner. That is beautiful fish. So
I was showing that to Griff.
That bulkhead there, it's gravity fed. Get you the angle there into this pipe, and I actually have it come to the opposite end of the tank. That way the water gets pushed all the way through the system. So that is gravity fed right there, the flow that you're seeing. And then the bulkhead is on the opposing end, and that is gravity fed down into the sump system, which is then pumped back to the very top. I'm going to flip that so I don't give anybody motion sickness. And repeat process. So yeah, absolutely. You don't have to tee off like that. And like I said, generally I don't. That was just the pump that I've got in there is almost too strong to pump just into those tanks, especially with having a water bridge on one of them. I think the pump that I've got in there is right at 1,000 gallons per hour. And 1,000 gallons per hour pumping into 3 10-gallon tanks with 1-inch bulkheads and the amount of water that they can drain. That tee off gives me the option of having some of the pressure. It almost works like a pressure valve, if you will, where I can adjust it and have just the right amount of flow going up to those 10-gallon tanks, especially when I have little fry or baby plecos or things up top, because I've got micro screens on the bulkheads up top. So if I've got, like angelfish fry or some really, really baby fish in there, I don't want a whole lot of flow going into those tanks, and I can allow some of that to blow off into that middle 40-gallon.
Hey, I just want to say hi to the Mac PNW showing up for their first live stream with us.
Hey, hello and welcome. Glad to have you here. I appreciate you hanging out tonight / this morning.
Awesome.
There we go. And Chewy LTD says, another thing I find is people have a tendency of keeping subtropical species at the highest temperature, which probably quickens their systems so they do not live as long. Fisherman fever.
Sure.
Definitely. I see that happen a lot. Know your fish. That's about just to bring it down to simplest terms. Just know your fish and what they should live in. Keep in mind the fish that you have may have never seen the wild. So just because it may be a certain temperature where that fish is native to doesn't mean that fish is used to it. If it's grown in a fish farm, in Florida, or if it came from a breeder local to you, and you're up north and that it's only ever seen 78 degrees in a fish tank, that's the temperature that it's used to. That's kind of what I would gear it towards, because that's what it's been born and raised and all that in.
Yeah, like take for example, my dad, he used to raise tuxedo guppies, red, white, and blue tuxedo guppies through the 70s and the 80s. He never once had a heater in any of our tanks, and he kept them in the basement. It probably got down like to the low 60s, never got probably hotter than 72 in our basement. And yet, he did it for years and sold them to all the pet stores like in the St. Louis, or not St. Louis, but Kansas City area. And I wish to God I had those guppies, because they were prolific. But they were used to those temperatures, and That's why the first thing I try to do whenever I get guppies is I want to keep them at 75, just to try to keep them longer. And I know that one of the tricks to making them have more babies is to heat it up, but I'd rather have my guppies live a little longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have one guppy tank that the guppies just start to fall apart and die if it goes below 80, and that's my Petco guppies. They'll be the only tank in my fish room that's going to have a heater. And it just, I keep trying to lower it. And as soon as I lower it, they stop eating. They just drop and go so lethargic. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to, just keep in mind that particular fish, like I said, not just the species or where it came from. Because you're going to run into cases like that where you may have a fish that in theory should be fine at 76, 78. But that particular strain or that particular fish is just, they're not good at adapting to it. They're accustomed to something else, and that's what they expect, and that's what keeps them happy.
Now, my Petco guppies, I can't wait to do it. Once I get them in the fish room, I'm looking forward to doing another highlight on them because they look amazing. I added some standard yellow fancy guppy, solid yellow fancy guppy that was really big. And now my Petcos, they were real small little guys, but I've had them for about a year. And the new everything is about over an inch big. They're just huge guppies. I absolutely love them.
Very nice.
And their tails are getting really big. They don't look like something you get from Petco.
Right.
Pretty neat. And I mean, they've got a big, bright orange snake skin tail. They're a good looking fish. And I love feeding them because they eat almost like piranhas. They're like my mollies. They just attack it. My other guppies, they're more prissy, but they're kind of different, but I like them.
So Jay's Crazy Obsession says, thanks for clarifying. I'm planning on pumping up into the 20 with 2 separate pumps and allowing 1 inline in the 20s in the middle and 1 outflow in the corner and 2 inline, and let me grab the other half of it, 2 out on the Zoom Ed low boy and down to the 75, but I'm also thinking I should work a water bridge into my system. That should work. I mean, that sounds like it would do the trick. One thing I would take into account is how big of a pump you're going to be using. If all of that water is going into 220s, what size bulkhead you're going to use. A 1-inch bulkhead gravity fed or non-pressurized can only handle so much water volume. So just keep those things in mind when you go to set it up. You definitely don't want to be trying to pump, 2,000 gallons of water through a 1-inch unpressurized bulkhead. It's just not going to keep up with it, and you're going to flood your tank out. Let's see.
I'm with Hoods. Hoods just said that he's gone years without heaters in his either of his tanks in the basement because he's afraid of them malfunctioning. And I'm totally with you 100%. And like that one tank that I was telling you about that I have to keep it warm, my cats have pulled it out of the plug-in twice out of the wall. And I know it's got to be my cats because nothing else other than me goes
right
around them. And as soon as that water drops, the fish stop eating, and I know, and I look, and it's the heater that's not on. But it could just as easily break and go too hot and roast them all too, I guess. That'd be a bummer.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the biggest fear with everybody is that malfunction where it sticks on and it doesn't turn off and it just boils everything. I had that happen once years ago, and that's about the worst malfunction you could have. I would rather overflow a tank into the floor any day than have that happen. Most of my systems that have the heaters in them, that heater there's so much water volume because I generally deal in systems versus individual tanks. There's so much water volume that it could handle that heater if it did it for a longer period than, say, having a 200-watt heater in a 20-gallon tank and just boiling everything. This is I forget what size heater is in here, but it's not what would be considered adequate if I were going with the 3 to 5 watts per gallon. It's just enough so that there's a little something extra there to kind of kick on and just maintain a bare minimum if need be. So even if it does get stuck on, I would have plenty of time if it were to even be able to get to an unsafe heat temperature. I'd have plenty of time before it got to that point. And that's one of the reasons why I love these little stick-on thermometers. It makes it so easy just to walk by and look and go, oh, okay, it's 78 degrees, or look across the room and go, oh, it's 81 degrees.
Now, does that have a cord that goes into the water?
It does. It's got...
Okay. It's like a digital
thermometer. It's got the little probe, and I'm not fancy. I don't care what it looks like. That little black cord right there is actually the probe. So there's the silver part. There we go. That right there is the temperature probe. And I've got
one.
I've got it in the furthest point away from the aquarium. That one is one of it was like a 10 pack that was real cheap on Amazon. If you go with one of those, which I'm not going to recommend either way, I will just say prepare for probably one or two of them not to work right at all, and have something for a baseline. So I've got like one of the $15 temperature probe or digital thermometers from Top Fin, I think, that I know is accurate. And so I took all of them and I put them in the same tank, in the same area of the tank, as the Top Fin. And I said, okay, well, this one reads +1 versus the Top Fin. This one reads, -2 versus the Top Fin. And I actually marked that. So like if I go to look at one and I know that it's calibrated a degree off, it says +1. So if it's reading 78, I know it's really 79 more than likely, because that's what my Top Fin reads or my temperature gun reads. So I would just say, if you go with the cheap ones, do test them against a baseline just to make sure that they are calibrated correctly. And if they're not, you can still use them. Just know, okay, this thing reads 2 degrees colder than what it really is.
That's a great tip. I've got one that I got in the Top Fin one that I got in my aquarium box. I think I even opened that box on here.
I think so.
That thing was, that's what I used to do like all my starting tanks. Like the first time I'm getting a tank ready, for the temperature, because it's instant. But otherwise, I really like the magnetic ones that have a magnet on one side and then it hooks to the front. I don't know if you've seen those. They cost about anywhere between $2.50 to $5. But I used to use suction cup ones and they'd float away all the time and stuff, and that would drive me nuts.
Yeah, I have that issue as well.
I got a question for you.
Yep.
This is a little off topic, which might be a little fun. It's from Fishy Fun. She is wondering, what types of fish can you keep with your big eel?
The types that you want it to eat. Yeah, there's not really a lot that I can put in there with it. Especially, okay, so in the quarantine tank, staging tank, however you want to phrase it, that I've got it in now, nothing, because there's just not enough space. If I had the 1,200-gallon aquarium like Aquatic had, I could probably try some things out. But
sand shark?
Yeah.
Like some little sharks? Or
you're still risking it, though, just because of how big she is. I mean, she's a good 36 inches, easy. She's got a mouth on her.
2 sets of jaws.
Yeah, you just have to keep in mind, just like most fish, if it can fit in its mouth, it's probably going to eat it. About the only thing that I would possibly, and I say this because I've done the combination before, and a lot of people do it in predator tanks, is a lionfish, but it would definitely have to be like a full-size lionfish, something that she would look at and go, no, I don't think I want to try and eat that. Now, she was in a tank with a smaller tessellata eel. It was only maybe about a third her size, and she didn't kill it, but they also weren't friendly, I don't think. The little one seemed to always be hiding from her.
Now,
there were other fish in there, but they filled that tank, not filled, but they've had a whole bunch of clownfish in the tank, but they were culls from a breeder here in state. And those were just to be eaten, and sure enough, she ate them off. So I really wouldn't want to risk putting anything in with her. And my fear with putting the lionfish in is she would try to eat it and harm herself. So I don't think she will ever have any tank mates, unless it's just like fish that I know that are going to be eaten eventually. Should there?
Will she eat a starfish?
I don't know that she would. She might, but I don't know. I was gonna say I do have some cleanup crew in there, like hermit crabs and turbo snails and stuff. She doesn't mess with them, so you can go like the cleanup crew route with shelled things, if you will, or things that are so small she's not going to mess with it. You could try and do something speed based, like maybe a goby that lives in the sand under a rock, and see how long you get away with it. If the thing's quick enough, she can't catch it, she can't eat it. But again, you're going to risk it, given her size.
Now, Big J says a big dog-faced puffer, but it would probably have to be such a big one, it would cost a couple $1,000.
Right.
I bet. And probably be hard to transport.
And
it's just the space.
Chewy says that Maury could kill a lionfish easily. Oh, it absolutely could. I've just
they've
really
trained them to do that.
Yeah.
Did you know that in the wild? They have I was watching a documentary because they do all those big things where they're hunting the lionfish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they figured that they kill a lionfish and they put it in front of the eels and the sharks, and then they'll eat it when it's dead. And once they figure out that they can eat these things, they've been eating them now. But for some reason, it's not in their heads that they can eat that. I don't know if they just move so slow, they look like a plant, but the poison actually doesn't bother the eels and the sharks. It's just they don't know to eat it. I thought that was really interesting.
Let's see where I was.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw that.
No, you're perfectly fine. No, you're good, buddy. I just wanted. I've missed something. I feel like I did. I know I did. I was wondering about the knife fish. Says Fishy Fun 57.
Oh.
I'm guessing you saw the knife fish on the other camera I've got there. So those are two small clown knives. They're 8 to 9 inches right now, which anybody that knows clown knives know they can get up to 3 feet. So they are little. They will eat smaller fish. Again, it's one of those, if it fits in its mouth, it'll eat it. They get along really well with the bysters I've got in there, that green terror. There's some clown loaches in there. That's basically kind of like a monster grow out, if you will. You could probably do a big grouper, Brandon.
Grouper.
Yeah, if you got one big enough. And of course, she's not really. If she's fed, I don't think she would go after a really big grouper. I think if it was one of those things to where if she got hungry, she could take it down. But I think in just an everyday situation where you're maintaining your fish and feeding everything properly like you should, I don't think she would go after a big grouper. Especially,
but you're still talking huge tank here. You're talking 800 to 1,000 gallon tank.
Yeah.
For that big of a grouper. So
well, you're gonna help me build that once we get that pole barn set up.
That would be fun.
We'll do the plywood build tanks.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing one too. Brad asked, is anybody still getting the aquarium box? I'm still getting mine. I've thought about stopping. I don't know. I might go till June or July, but because I'm actually getting a lot of stuff, and I just don't need that much. But it's still kind of fun, so I still get it. Okay, sorry, just answered that one real quick.
Oh, you're good. I think I caught everything. I think we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you've got any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. There's so much more that we could have covered with setting up a fish room, and maybe we pick up on that again next week. If you all have any questions to come up with between now and then, or any tips or tricks, it's one of those things we could probably talk for 6 hours about setting up a fish room and all the different minutiae that goes into it. I guess one thing I am going to do real quick, since I do have that other camera on and their light on, is I'm going to go drop some food in that tank so y'all can see everybody come out.
Yeah, and there's so many different types of fish rooms that people do. Like Dean's fish room is just basically set up for breeding fish. And then Dan's fish room, with Dan's fish, he's set up just for retail, moving his fish. So he brings them in, make sure they're super healthy, and then he sells them. My fish room is going to be kind of just for me to look at my fish and to try to grow them and try to compete eventually in the IFGA, which is the guppy organization, to try to win awards. If you look at Doug Gray has an amazing channel, Guppy channel. If anybody watches him, a lot of fun to watch his shows. All his tanks are long wise. They're not for like looking at for prettiness, but for just breeding beautiful fish. And he likes to make different ones with different things to see what he gets for experiments. So, there's so many different types of fish rooms. And then, unlike James' fish room, his is for looking at his fish, and he has lots of different types of fish. I'm going to be species only, but mainly live bearers, because that's what I like. So there's just so many different types of fish rooms. It's crazy.
I'm sure at least one person will ask what I'm feeding all of them. If I can get it to focus. Of course I can't get it to focus. It is the Hikari Sinking Cichlid Gold medium size. I ordered in the 2.2 pound bags. Amazon link on my website. There we go. Shameless plug since I'm paying for a website every month.
If Hikari would sponsor us, we could get a Hikari on our bowling shirts.
Right?
Maybe that's what I gotta say. Hey, if you give us all a bag of food, we'll put your name on our shirts and say you're officially the Mafia sponsor. Oh, they may not like the Mafia name.
Right.
We'll say the Tennessee YouTubers.
Hey, we'll talk to Kenny at Aquatic Marine.
Yeah. So, okay. Sorry, I got thrown off there.
Oh, you're fine, buddy. But yeah,
let's see. Does anybody have anything? We talked about so many different things. It's crazy.
It was a good night. I had fun. I'll be honest. It's been a little bit stressful the past couple streams. Things have just not really clicked for me. But I had a whole lot of fun tonight. I always enjoy talking to everybody, but tonight was the most fun that I've had in a while. I appreciate you all showing up tonight and hanging out and interacting with us. And of course the lurkers as well. I'm one of those people that lurks all the time, so I can appreciate you too. See. Yeah, so if you've got anything for us, got about 5 minutes left. Kayla's Aquatic says hashtag breathing is pleasure. There you go. We'll knock off of Dan's fish there.
Yep. I wore Dan's shirt in the live stream with James and Chris on Tuesday. And whose shirt was that? Oh, I was going to buy Dr. Black's shirt last week, but that T-Bubble or Bubble Pop or Red Bubble.
Red Bubble, yep.
The biggest size is double X, and I'm a 3X guy. Gotcha. So that's caught me now twice. Ooh, look at that knife. That's caught me twice because I was going to buy Bob's like 2 weeks ago, and his only went up to 2X, and now Blackie's are only 2X.
Huh. Well, we carry. I've got up to 4X.
Yep. And we got to get together and get mine done.
We do. I also need to get with you so that we can get get your computer set up for streaming. Not that I care to host it off of mine, but it would be nice for you to have the ability to do what you want whenever you want to, whether I'm available or not.
I'd love it if you just quit your job and do this whenever I want.
I'd love it if I just quit my job and do this whenever I want. I don't know if I have to deal with much more of this being essential nonsense. I just might. People are nuts. I can't tell you how many people are mad at me because I don't have toilet paper and I won't hold it for them when it comes in on the truck.
Well, and I think that's been a big part of you being cranky, or not cranky, but or I don't want to say cranky or depressed, but just in a funk the last couple weeks. That, and it's nice to have Shy back in working condition.
Right.
You know, that's awesome to have her healthy, because not only is it wonderful to have her around, but it's also helps you with the little kiddos.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So she's just a huge helper in your life.
She really is, 100%. Yeah, can't thank her enough. I do want to emphasize again, we've got 2 more shows, 2 more Thursday night shows we'll be doing on this channel, and then we will be switching the Nocturnal Feeding show over to Chattanooga Ed's channel. I will continue on with the Saturday Night Fever live streams, at least for the time being, but I'm honestly looking at going back to kind of like I used to do before, where I just kind of live stream when I feel like doing a live stream. I think that was a lot more fun for people. I mean, this is fun for people, but I don't know. There's just something about just popping on and going, "Hey, I'm live," and we're like, "Oh, hey, look, I wasn't expecting that." I miss doing that, and it feels like with two weekly scheduled live streams, I'm almost being greedy by popping on an extra time, because it's like, well, you've already got 2 scheduled shows. Shut up. We don't need to hear you a third time this week. But
see, how I look at it is we're 2 guys. So, but
yeah,
I got a quick question from Brad, Mr. Fish. Oh, it just popped. Mr. Fish, sir. He says, Ed, keeping my platies from dropping fry. Wait. Oh, what can I keep my platies from dropping fry? My water's been more acidy this winter. I'm guessing that maybe he's on a well or something, or his pH just isn't that high for some reason.
possibly.
But get either a bag that you can. I don't know if you live by any fish stores, but they sell these little Ziploc bag or zipper bags, or they can be twist tie bags, or you can even just take like pantyhose and just pour some crushed coral in there and drop it in the corner, and it'll bring the hardness up in your tank, and your platies will go crazy.
You can
That
also,
helps.
yeah, and for the bags, because I know a lot of times it's like $5 or $6 for those bags that are specifically media bags. I found going to the dollar store, like I'll go there and I'll buy a 3-pack of the lingerie bags that are made to stick the lingerie in before you throw it in the washer, and it's zippered, so you can get 3 of those for $1. 3 mesh bags for $1, and they're good sized bags. And if you don't need that much space, you could just fold it over. So super cheap.
But yeah, I mean, you can also get pantyhose at the dollar store too.
Yep.
So
I try and keep some in stock, but it.
Well, I've got a sister and 3 nieces that all live together in Hickson. So they just give me, whenever they get one with a run, I say, don't throw them away. And then I take them and I cut them up and use them. So, I mean, I use those things on everything. I use those on my pumps, on my, when I'm not the vacuum, but when I'm just sucking water up, for my water changes, because I don't want to catch any of my little guppies. Right. But yeah, I hope that helped. I'm not a platy expert. These are my first platies I've ever had, but I've got a whole mess of babies. And you know what, Brad, platies are vicious. I've been watching them, and they go after their babies like crazy. I think out of all the live bears, they eat their babies more than anything I've ever seen. So I've got a ton of guppy grass, and the babies just stay tight in that guppy grass. And it's not until they're, almost a little round fat ball, before they come out. They look like a little tadpole, but they're bigger, and they're big, fat little guys. They're kind of neat looking babies, but basically too big for them to fit in their parents' mouth. So that's when I start to see them, but they come out of the guppy grass, and that's when I see that they've had babies. And it was shocking, because I hadn't seen anything. And then all of a sudden I just see all these little guys coming out for the water, or for the food. And I always crush. I use flake food. I was watching Rack's show, and he pretty much only feeds all of his fish pellets, all of his guppies. But I take the flake food and I go like this, and I grind it up extra hard in my hand because adults don't even need big pieces. You know, they'll like the powder too. So I put powder in all of my guppy tanks. Now with my mollies, they like the big chunks. They don't like the pellets. They'll spit pellets out. But I'll take a big chunk of the flakes and I just shove it in, and they just go crazy. But I mean, they're a bigger fish, so they can just tear up everything. But that was mollies, not platies. The platies I do just like the guppies.
So if we've got anybody that's coming on next, please let me know, and we'll be happy to direct people that way. We have hit our 2 hours for the night. I want to say a quick thank you to Sand Creek Aquatic, Multi-Tank Addiction, and the Zen Ginger for the super chats. Very much appreciated, never required, but it does help. And I know times are tough right now, so thank you very, very much for your support. Thank you to everybody for tuning in tonight. Everybody that interacted, the lurkers, the watchers. You know, I hope you all had a good time and enjoyed the show. Of course, my co-host Chattanooga Ed, and soon to be the main host of the Nocturnal Feeding Show. I appreciate you hanging out with me. There was a question earlier, I forgot about it, but I just remembered it looking at my hat. Somebody asked if the hat was available outside of the United States. Ed is actually currently wearing the only one of those. I left it in his truck. I do have hats on order, and they are the exact same style as the Aquarium Co-op hats. So once I get those and get them embroidered, I'll start selling those and probably give a couple away in a raffle, or not a raffle, but do a giveaway on stream. But currently that is the only one in existence. So sorry I didn't get to that question earlier. I forgot it. I don't see anybody mentioning jumping.
And I want to buy one of those hats from you too. You know what? Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dragon Lair and Mr. Fish Sir, if you guys could send me your addresses to me in Facebook tomorrow. Is it Facebook? It's Facebook. I always get my page and Facebook mixed up. If you guys could send me your address, I'll get you guys both a couple bags of the guppy grass. I haven't been planning on leaving my house for the next 2 to 3 weeks because I'm stocked to the rim on everything. But maybe I'll venture out to the mailbox or the post office on Monday and get you guys some guppy grass. But okay, sorry.
Nope, you're good. I was actually just about to turn it over to you to see if you wanted to say your farewells, and then I'll kill it. And unless somebody pops up a link, that'll be the night.
Yeah, guys, we appreciate y'all coming out and having a fun time. I love it, having a good time with you guys like this. It was just fun. We kind of were all over the place. We'll have to see if anybody left any goofy names for us.
Yeah, we'll have to go back through and rewatch that. Zen Ginger, thank you for the $3 super sticker with the waving hippo that says next time. And of course, the one person or group of people I had not thanked yet, saving the best for last, if you will. The moderator team, you all do a fantastic job. You're very much appreciated. Love the fact that you all are in here. We will see you all Saturday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Saturday Night Fever. So until then, keep your fish healthy, keep yourselves healthy, and catch yourself a little fish room fever. Bye, everybody.
It is Chattanooga Ed, Facebook. Sorry. He asked while you're talking.
You're fine.